I've no idea what he's going to talk, but I'm really excited about it. So my dear friend and inspired individual, Vajragupta. Thank you very much. Sangha Day. Lovely introduction. So when the Buddha was an old man, he went on a farewell tour with Ananda, his cousin, around the region of what's now northern India, where they lived. And they walked around the farms, the villages, the towns, and the growing cities, meeting people, knowing that they were meeting for the last time, giving last teachings, having last conversations. They also visited many rivers and forests and shrines and beautiful nature. And it's very lovely moments in the scriptures where the Buddha and Ananda are looking on these places, again, knowing they're looking on them for the last time. And on this journey, they get bits of news along the way. And basically, their generation are getting old and passing on. So one piece of news that they get is that Shariputra and Moggallana, who were the two sort of chief disciples, the two kind of leaders of the Buddhist Sangha, have both died. And the Buddha makes this comment that it's as if the two greatest branches have fallen off a tree. So this sense of a generation passing on, and the Buddha knowing that soon it will be his turn too. So there's this very well-known image of the Buddha sitting peacefully under the Bodhi tree in meditation, peaceful, serene, radiant. But that's not the whole story. In a way, the Buddha didn't have an easy life. There was this extraordinary spiritual awakening that happened in his life. And he did manage to communicate that to others. And something extraordinary started to erupt and unfold in the society around him. People from all walks of life were affected by that and wanted to hear what he had to say. But it wasn't an easy life. There would have been the physical hardship. Just this old man, hobbling around India, meeting people, talking to people. A community starts to grow, and that starts to create all sorts of work, all sorts of issues of how to organize a community, how to ensure it kind of carries on with integrity. As it became successful, there would have been influence and status to be had by becoming a leader of that community. And so sometimes the Buddha had to deal with people wanting to get into leadership positions for the wrong reasons. Or he had to deal with people trying to create schisms in his community in order to get followers, in order to get status and power and so on. Sometimes there was rivalry with other religious groupings. It could be quite serious, actually. Quite heavy, dark things happened. So apparently there was one time where there was a rival group and people in that area were converting to Buddhism. And the monks lived on alms. So it meant the followers of that group were no longer getting alms. People were choosing to give the alms, the food, the offerings to the Buddhists instead. So this caused, maybe it caused hardship actually, and therefore it caused resentment and anger. And it actually ended up in someone being murdered. Quite serious, quite kind of dark. It was a young woman was murdered. And the people that did it tried to pin the blame onto the Buddhists so that people would sort of blame the Buddhists and not give alms. So the Buddha had to intervene. The Buddha had to deal with that kind of situation. And one of the things he did eventually was he said, tell people if they want to convert to Buddhism, obviously they're free to do that, but they must carry on giving alms to the people that they've formerly been supporting, so those people aren't suddenly without support. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? It was a complex situation. He didn't have an easy life. There were many, many difficulties and challenges that he was sort of dealing with all the time. Yeah. And not only that, he lived in a time of change. Um, he lived actually in a time of turmoil in the surrounding society. Um, it was a time where there was growing trade and mobility and economic activity, and that meant the growth of these new cities, big trading centres connected by trading routes, and that eventually meant political upheaval. And there was a process underway in his time of smaller kind of tribal societies basically being overtaken by their larger neighbours and turned into these large city states. Yeah, and that often happened through warfare, through invasion and warfare and oppression. Yeah, so all that was going on in his society at the time. Yeah, and that wasn't something he was watching on the television, happening thousands of miles ago. It was personal. A lot of his family, they were from a tribe called the Shetland tribe. That was one of the tribes that was put down. He lost a lot of the members of his family who were murdered because of this. Yeah, that was what he was dealing with in his life. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to come back to that at the end of my talk, but yeah, I just want to sort of put that image there of the Buddha working away on this final tour in northern India, and in a way not having, it wasn't easy. It was difficult. There were many, many challenges that he had to face. So now, if it's all right, I want to jump 2,500 years and across the world to Croydon Buddhist. Here we are, 2,500 years later, practicing the teachings of the Buddha, trying to establish a Buddhist Sangha in Croydon. Yeah. And yeah, I've been here about 6 years, working away with a fantastic team of people and a fantastic Sangha. And some things have gone really well. Some things have gone really well, better than I expected, actually. I was just sort of thinking about it. In the last 6 years, there's been 8 people connected with this centre being ordained. Yeah, amazing. 2 of them, to be honest, were also from other centres, so we can't claim full credit. But even so, yeah, six homegrown, and two Dharma Kumara and Viryadeva, connected to other centres, but also, having a very strong connection with this centre. And not only that, there's quite a lot of people here, really seriously training for ordination, and you can see that in the next few years, there's going to be another, good handful of people getting done like that. So that's fantastic. Aryatara, the men's community in up the road in Purley, is going really well. 10 guys living there. It's a real source of spiritual energy for this centre, I think. A lot of the people there practicing there are also really engaged in here. And I think this whole situation is benefiting from the kind of vibrancy of Aryatara. That's something that's going really well. Our Sangha has grown, yeah. In a way, I think it's only grown moderately. I think there's a lot more to do, but it has grown. And later today, we're going to have 6 new mitras. How wonderful is that? Yeah. And our Sangha is growing more diverse. Yeah. 6 years ago, it was a grey-haired, getting older Sangha. There's more diversity in terms of age. There's more diversity in terms of race. I think we're more reflective of Croydon in terms of the kind of people who come to the Buddhist Centre. I think that's a very good thing. We've done some really exciting teaching over the last 6 years, and we've done some really exciting ways of practicing together. So I'm thinking of the working retreats. I'm thinking of the big urban retreat that we've just had, which we'll say more about this afternoon. We're going to rejoice in that a little bit this afternoon. It's really been something, actually, a really, really good experiment in what a Buddhist centre can be. Yeah. And just over the years, I've seen so many people light up because of the teachings of the Buddha. We've done loads on the building as well. It's really been beautified and transformed, from top to bottom. The only major area left now that needs serious renovation is the foyer area to the mandala space on the next floor up. We've done everything else. It's like when I wrote that down, it's like, oh wow, we've done so much. Really, really amazing. Of course, there's always more to do. We've just discovered 2 leaks in the building. We don't know how serious yet, but that's the nature of buildings, isn't it? We just have to kind of keep going with them. But we've done so much, yeah. And yeah, there's a wonderful Sangha, really wonderful people coming along and practicing here. So I want to rejoice in that, but I also, I suppose I've been in a bit of a process the last year or so, kind of, yeah, rejoicing in what's gone well, but also having to sort of accept that some things are not working the way that we had hoped they would work. Yeah. And in a way, starting to think through why that is and how we need to respond. So one thing that I just want to acknowledge is the loss of hidden gems. So most of you know we had the charity shop next door, run by Buddhist women, and sadly, recently we made the decision to close it. Sad and a bit mad because we had the team and they were making money, but we felt it was very, very important to us that was a Buddhist team with a Buddhist ethos, and it was a training place. It was a place where people got a Dharma training for ordination, practicing what we call team-based right livelihood. And we just didn't have the sort of leadership, the right people to mentor that and to make sure we were providing that training. So, very with a heavy heart, we felt we had to make that decision. Yeah. And I think there are things to talk about from that. I think there is things that we need to think about and discuss from that. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I think that's for another time. Mainly what I want to talk about today in terms of, what's not going so well is this thing that we're not growing as fast as I thought. We're not, I mean, it's a bit funny saying that with the room packed out today, but we're not attracting loads of people. I'd expect this place to be full several times a week. Yeah, like 50, 60, 70 people here several times a week. Yeah. And we have grown, but we're still a long way from that. Yeah. And, so that to me, that means we're not really fulfilling our potential. It creates other problems. It creates a financial pressure. It's like a big building with a small community inside it. But mainly, it's like there's so much more potential. There's so much more we could be doing. Yeah. And in a way, I suppose what I want to talk about today is, in a way, I think that's an aspect of it. It's to do with where we are. It's to do with being on Croydon High Street. Yeah. In the 80s heyday of this Buddhist centre, which Sangha Day can tell you about, this was one of the most successful tree rattler centres. This and the London Buddhist Centre, where they used to vie, they used to compete to be the best. They were both very, very vibrant, fast-growing, successful Buddhist centres. Yeah. But in those days, Croydon, it was a much more wealthy area, much more middle class. It had aspirations to be a city on the edge of a city. It was a place that had aspirations. There was a much more vibrant civic culture. Yeah, they'd built the Fairfield Halls, for example, I don't know when that was built, probably in the 60s. Apparently, the concert hall there is acoustically as good as the South Bank Centre. It was built to a very high standard. Yeah. And you look at it today, and there's hardly anything happening in there. And apparently, they're even thinking they may have to sell it. And if that would happen, nothing like that would ever get built ever again. Yeah. I don't know whether that's a rumor. I don't know whether that's true, but the local authorities bankrupt, they're in serious financial trouble. Yeah. So yeah, Croydon today, uh, boarded up shops all along, including our own, sadly. A centre to pay, the local authority, it's bailed out by central government every year for several years now. Um, there was a survey in The Guardian a couple of weeks ago about what's the word? Deprivation, the kind of deprived areas of the UK. And it was one of these interactive things where you could type in a postcode and it would give you the statistics for your area. So, of course, I typed in the postcode of the here. And so where we are, where the Buddhist Centre is, it's in the bottom about 8 or 9% most deprived areas of the UK. Yeah. It's quite something, isn't it? Of course, it would change. You go that way, it will change quite quickly. That's the thing about cities, isn't it? You get these little pockets, these little kind of different areas, yeah. But where we are, bottom 8 or 9%, yeah. Interestingly, I also had the statistics for 2019, just only 6 years ago, not long ago. So then it was about the bottom 23%. Yeah. So it's fallen 15% in 6 years. So this is an area that's struggling, basically. There's a lot of struggle going on there. There's a lot of decay, there's a lot of trouble. Yeah. That's where we are. That's where we've got our Buddhist centre. Yeah. And of course, that's a local instance of a wider picture, isn't it? We all know our whole society is troubled at the moment. Yeah. We hear talk all the time of the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, the global warming crisis, housing crisis, financial crisis, globalization crisis, democracy crisis. Yeah. There's a sense of a world in crisis. There's a sense that everything now is just permanent emergency. And yeah, hardly any hope, hardly any vision, just so much anger, fatalism, despair, blame, and division in society. Yeah, yeah, that's the world we're in. That's the climate that we're in at the moment. So all this has had an effect on me, of course, and yeah, I have to confess, I have been through a time of doubt. I've been through a time of wondering, is this really working? Uh, are we really speaking to the people of Croydon? And that has a sort of personal aspect to it. I said, am I the right person? I'm middle-aged, I'm middle class, I'm white, I'm a particular temperament. I'm actually a very quiet, withdraw, introverted. I feel my limitations. I feel the ways in which, in a way, I'm not the right kind of person.
Mm.
Yeah. I think it's fine to feel that and to sort of know that. Yeah. I feel my limitations. Yeah. And yeah, I've just been asking myself a lot, does the way we articulate the Dharma address what's going on in the world? Does the way we articulate the Dharma address what's going on in Croydon for the people around us? Yeah. Have we got anything to say? Have we got a voice in Croydon? And if not, what's the point? Why have this place? What's the point of it? Yeah. So I want to make it clear, I'm not doubting the Dharma. I don't have any doubt in the Buddha's teaching. It's more I'm doubting how or how we practice it and communicate it. I'm asking, am I and are we doing what's needed to activate the Dharma as a force in today's world? And this comes out of a deep sadness about where the world seems to be heading. It comes out of a deep sadness about the suffering that we see. You just walk that way, you see so much suffering. Yesterday, actually, we were having a team meeting in the shop window bit up the front, and outside there was six drug addicts. You know, you could tell, you could see their sort of pinched faces and their kind of, you know, sad eyes, desperate eyes, and they were sharing out some food that they'd obviously just sort of stolen from a shop, and you know, it's just this weird thing of us in here and them out there, and sort of seeing that suffering. And there's a kind of food bank place up there, and you go up there when they're dishing out the food. There's a huge queue. There's not just homeless people, there's families there, and then even ordinary people, just their kind of blank faces, faces of suffering, faces of people struggling to live some kind of life in this society. Yeah. Uh, yeah, and sometimes I feel I don't know how to respond. I don't know what to do. And I ask myself, is what we're doing adequate? So yeah, to try and explore this, I want to make another little jump, not so far in space or time this time. I want to jump to the London Buddhist Centre, which is in East London, and it's September 1979, and people there are gathering to celebrate Padmasambhava Day. Yeah. So the London Buddhist Centre, it's only been open about a year. They've had this extraordinary building project where loads of people just gave themselves, young people giving themselves sheer idealism, working extremely hard for hardly any money at all, actually living in this derelict building. It's an old fire station, an old Victorian fire station. They lived there through the winter and converted it into a Buddhist centre, and eventually managed to do it and opened what was then, may still be, the largest Buddhist centre in Europe. Yeah, this real sense of excitement and achievement and pioneering and wanting to change the world. Yeah. Um, and yeah, so right now they're gathering to celebrate Padmasambhava Day. So this Padmasambhava is a very well-known figure from Buddhist tradition. His name means the lotus-born guru. He took the Dharma to Tibet. He took the Buddhist teachings to Tibet, and where other people hadn't managed to overcome the forces of greed, hatred, and delusion, which were preventing the teachings from taking root, Padmasambhava managed to get the Dharma to flourish in Tibet. And that year, 1979, the life and liberation of Padmasambhava, which is an extraordinary biography of Padmasambhava, have been published in English for the first time. Yeah, hadn't been available in English before then. So this extraordinary biography has been published, and so Padmasambhava is in a way coming to the West. He's starting to be known. His teachings, his life, are starting to be known about in the world. And so Sangharakshita comes along to this day, and he gives a talk. The talk's called "The Manu, the Buddha, the Guru, and the Turtle." Yeah. So the Manu is the lawgiver. So basically, for a Buddha to come and be able to establish the Dharma, you need a society with a reasonable kind of level of stability. There needs to be at least some kind of society for a teaching to be able to be taught and flourished, and for a community to form around that. So that's the Manu. Then can come the Buddha. So a Buddha is someone who discovers the Dharma. It's not known in the world at that time, but they, through their own extraordinary spiritual determination, actually discover the path to enlightenment, actually discover the deathless, the Dharma, the path to awakening. And then they're also able to find ways to share it with others and to communicate it with others. That's the Buddha. So you get the Manu, the Buddha, and then later you get the Guru. So Padmasambhava was the Guru, and the special role of the Guru is, in a way, almost to kind of deepen and further the work of the Buddha. Yeah? So the Tibetans call Padmasambhava the second Buddha. Yeah. What the guru does is they are able to take that teaching and engage it with the deeper forces of in the world. Yeah. So in the kind of myth of Padmasambhava, he converts the demons. He engages with the kind of the demons, the kind of demonic forces of greed, hatred, and delusion, and he's able to convert them and get them to serve the Dharma, get them to help the Dharma, rather than be a kind of an impediment, an obstacle. Yeah. So it's like the guru takes the Dharma kind of down, deeper down. They take the Dharma into the world more kind of deeply and thorough, as it were. Yeah. So here's some quotes from Sangharakshita's talk on the guru. Yeah. So he says, this is talking about that biography, the life and liberation of Padmasambhava. One gets the impression not only of a vivid and powerful spiritual personality heroically battling with the forces of evil, but also of a stream of impersonal spiritual energy, which, intervening in the course of events, age after age, assuming a variety of forms, brings under its control all the swirling emotional psychic energies which obstruct the liberating influence of the Dharma. Yeah. So that's what it's like. If you read the life and liberation of Padmasambhava, it's a strange text because on one level, it's the biography of an individual going to Tibet and heroically battling with the forces that are impeding the Dharma. But on another level, he crops up at different times in history, crops up hundreds of years later and hundreds of years earlier. So on another level, it's like this force of the Dharma just flowing through history, sweeping through history, cropping up here, cropping up there, engaging with what's going on, engaging with the world, and allowing the Dharma to flourish and liberate beings. Yeah. So then Sangharakshita says, let the demons come. Let all the gods and demons of the city of London, the West, and the whole world come and be transformed. Let them come, but let them be transformed. And a little bit later he says, you don't have to go outside the world to find the transcendental. You go very deeply into it. You utilize all its forces, all its energies, and you integrate them within yourself. And that is your spiritual life. So yeah, this sense of the guru going into the world and utilizing those energies, and that's your spiritual life. So you've got the Manu, the Buddha, the Guru, then comes the Turtan. So the Turtan, so basically Padmasambhava hid various what are called terma treasures. He hid various teachings and texts. And then there are these special figures called Turtans who rediscover them years later, even hundreds of years later. It's all rather mysterious. There are kind of earth termas and there are air termas. And years later, these spiritually alive beings who are Turtans discover them. Yeah. So, for example, the Bardo Tadol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this is actually a Padmasambhava terma treasure. It's attributed to Padmasambhava, even though it appeared hundreds of years later than Padmasambhava's historical life. Yeah. So this is the idea of the Turtan and the terma treasures that they leave. Yeah. And in this talk, Sangharakshita talked about that as basically circumstances change through history and new versions of the teachings are needed for new circumstances. That's what the Turtan does. They discover, as it were, new versions of the teachings for new circumstances. And Sangharakshita didn't say this, but maybe he was the Turtan for us. Yeah. he lived this life where he was incredibly open and alive to the Dharma, uh, completely open and alive to that stream of spiritual energy flowing through time, flowing through history, completely alive and open and receptive to the Buddha and to the Guru. And then he was able to find or discover the new ways to express that Dharma, to find the new teachings for new circumstances. He was able to be that channel, that vessel for the Dharma in a completely new context, in a completely new situation in the West in modern times. Yeah. And yeah, at the time he gave this talk, it was a very inspired phase for him. He was giving like hundreds of talks and seminars, uh, and people from that time talk about, how completely inspiring it was and how he was able to give people a way into these traditional texts, how he was able to sort of unlock the power of these texts for people. Uh, and then how he was also to find new ways to express the Dharma. Yeah? So a lot of his teachings, terms that we all use around here these days, things like integration, vision and transformation, true individual, spiritual death, and spiritual rebirth. These are all Sangharakshita terma treasures. Yeah, they're not traditional terms. They don't have a kind of exact one-to-one equivalent in Buddhist tradition, but they're very true to the Dharma. Yeah, they're very true to the sort of principles and vision of the Dharma, and he was just finding new ways to convey that. Yeah. Okay, so what does all that actually mean for us? Yeah. Here we are. It's now actually 45 years later from when he gave that talk in 1979. And the world is so different now. Yeah. So then he was doing a job of translating for a completely new world and new circumstances. It almost feels like it's changed so much again in 45 years. The world is very, very different and possibly still changing very, very rapidly. Yeah. So what does all this mean for us 45 years later in a world that's now so different to when Sangharakshita translated the Dharma for us? What does it mean for us and our challenges on Croydon High Street? Our challenges of trying to share the Dharma, trying to meet the world that is around us. What's it mean for me and my doubts and my fears about what we're doing? It's funny giving this talk. It's, when sometimes you give a talk, there's a little voice at the back going, is this just me? Uh, um, so yeah, in a way, I'm just going to speak from my heart. I'm just going to speak how it is for me personally. And maybe you can relate to this. But yeah, in a way, I just want to speak for myself. Yeah. Coming through this time of doubt and fear, as it were. So yeah, speaking for myself, I feel the need to be bolder. I feel the need to have more courage. I feel the need to not give way to doubt. The poet Yeats in 1921 said, "The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. That is so descriptive of the current political situation, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I've been thinking about that in relation to myself. Yeah. Am I a passionate voice of conviction? Is Buddhism a passionate voice of conviction in our society? Yeah. The problem is that Buddhism has an image not solely of its own making. The public image of Buddhism partly is coming now through secularized um, kind of derivatives of Buddhism, yeah, where techniques from Buddhist tradition are taught to help people cope with modern life. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Obviously, people benefit from that, yeah, but that has an effect on how people see Buddhism, maybe in terms of techniques, maybe in terms of dealing with individual problems in an individual kind of way, yeah. Um, Buddhism has an image not solely of its own making in a consumer society. Sometimes Buddhist imagery is used to sell things. You know, there's adverts with nice, smiling, uh, happy Buddhist monks selling some kind of product. Yeah, and yes, so the public image of Buddhism can often be sort of calm, detached, mild, accepting, and very much individual and private rather than social and collective. Yeah. So in a way, not bad, not wrong, but not what Buddhism really is, not the whole story, not enough. Yeah. And uh, often the good is the enemy of the best, isn't it? Yeah. So we have an image not solely of our own making. Yeah. So yes, does that mean in relationship to these kind of bigger issues that we can come across as weak or as bland or as not really having a voice? Yeah. We can be a voice of reason with passion, with conviction. If you heard how Sangha taught, if you heard how Dr. Ambedkar, the leader of the ex-untouchables, they spoke with such conviction and such passion. That their voices weren't weak or bland voices at all. Yeah. People need vision. People need hope. They need something to live for. They need something to fight for. That's our job. That's our challenge, to be offering that to people. And so I feel myself the need to speak with more boldness and more courage. Speaking personally, I want to break out of fatalism. I want to be done with the doom stories. Uh, Again, we're in a climate where in the media and in public discourse, there's such a sense of inevitability. There's such a sense of doom and despair and inevitability twinned with a kind of righteous rage. Yeah. Uh, and that affects us, doesn't it? I notice even with myself, having conversations with my friends, just saying, oh, yeah, we're just heading for fascism. And it's a kind of doubt, a despondency, and then it becomes a story, it becomes a kind of inner narrative, and it kind of gets in and affects you. Yeah. And then, of course, that plays into lacking conviction. If you're in a doom story, it undermines conviction. Yeah. So we do have to be realistic about the times we live in. Yeah. Uh, Actually, all civilizations will end. And that does include ours. Yeah. That's what the Buddha taught. All things, all conditioned things are impermanent. Yeah. This civilization that we're in, that we take for granted, it's a conditioned thing. And of course, it will end one day. We don't know when, we don't know how, but we do know that's there. And I think we have to be realistic that the signs are there, actually, that we are living through a time of change. Yeah. Just the scale of ecological challenge, just what globalization has done in terms of creating vast inequality. Levels of inequality are now right back where they were in the 19th century, and the kind of division and alienation that causes in society, and then certain people kind of becoming the scapegoat for that. You know what I'm talking about, yeah. The assumption of constant economic growth now breaking down. You can no longer assume that. It used to be assumed that one's children would do better than, that assumption is breaking down. We see in so many places in the world the undermining of democracy, in various ways. Again, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, just the way the world is so fast moving and so complex. Just this sense that governments just cannot cope. They cannot keep up with the sort of scale and intensity and rapidity of the problems that are coming at them. We do live in very, very difficult, challenging times. Yeah. We can't take for granted the kind of world that we've been living in. But being sober about this is not the same as fatalism. Yeah. Fatalism is closing the door when it's still open. There are certain forces at work in our world. There are certain conditions at play in the world, and they do have a huge momentum. And yeah, of course, a lot of them, they're not under our control. But how we respond to them is not yet decided. What emerges from our response is not yet decided. Fatalism will decide it in one particular way. Yeah, our inner narratives, our inner story will become the reality. But yeah, it's not yet decided. The door is not yet closed. I want to quote James Baldwin, the black civil rights activist. So in Harlem in 1963, he wrote a book called The Fire Next Time. It's an extraordinary book. You should read it if you haven't read it. He said this: the political institutions of any nation are always menaced and are ultimately controlled by the spiritual state of the nation. The political institutions of any nation are always menaced and are ultimately controlled by the spiritual state of the nation. Yeah. So in other words, putting it slightly the other way around, the crisis is a spiritual crisis. Yeah. It's a crisis of values. It's a crisis of vision. It's a crisis of understanding about what life is really about, what human life can really be about. Yeah. That's what's at the root of all this. We're living in a world where AI is emerging more and more strongly, and there are people arguing that, well, in a way, we don't need to worry about things because AI will solve our problems. Yeah. I mean, I find this staggering. This is very intelligent, sophisticated people arguing this. I find it like, how can they be so stupid to not see that it's not a technical problem, it's a human problem. It's a spiritual problem. It's a problem of values and ethics and vision. It's utterly extraordinary that people can argue that. So yeah, I feel the need to shake off the doom stories and yeah. I also feel the need to dig deeper into the Dharma and work more creatively with the Dharma. Yeah, I've already mentioned that the world is already so different. So when Sangha first did that job of translation, that genius work of translating and articulating the Dharma for a new time and a new world. But maybe, yes, so many of the surrounding ideas and assumptions are now changing. And we have to think about that and take that into account. So I'm not at all suggesting that that means the way he taught isn't relevant or that it all needs to change. In fact, I still think we're still discovering what he really taught, actually. Because our community matures and deepens, we're actually kind of, oh, right, that's what he meant. I think that's still going on. Yeah. And I think we need to ask ourselves, how do we articulate the Dharma for today's world? Yeah? What is the dukkha, the difficulty, the frustration, the suffering of people? And how can Buddhism speak to that? What has Buddhism got to say about that? You know? It may be that this world goes into more serious chaos and decay and disorder. what teachings will be needed? How are we going to respond? What are we going to do? Yeah. So yeah, this idea of the tertons, discovering new teachings for new circumstances. It's a bit like, and this is a big challenge, it's a bit like we need to be the tertons. Yeah. And this place is our living terma treasure. Yeah. And that's something I very strongly feel, that this place isn't for me. You know, I'm in my late 50s, I've got the Dharma. This isn't about me. This place is for the next generation. I think that's how we need to think. I need to think of this, you know, when I see the school kids waiting for the bus, it's for them. It's for the people who might discover the Dharma in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 15 years' time. We're doing this for them. We're doing this. They, you know, they're growing up in a terrible world, aren't they? Can we do something for them? Yeah. What can we do for them? That's how we need to think. Yeah. Um, so we need to immerse ourselves in that living stream of Dharma. And then we need to be alive to where we are, to who we meet. And out of that engagement with them and with the Dharma, let the teachings be discovered. Let the teachings be revealed. And we don't know what that looks like yet. Yeah. And as I've been writing this talk, I've realized that that doesn't matter. Actually, I've realized that's a good thing. It's not a formula. It's not a kind of program. It's a process. It's a process of engagement. Yeah. We've got to be, that's what create, you know, you don't know what you're going to create before you create it, do you? If you knew that it would absolutely kill creativity. Yeah. It's a creative process. We've just got to give ourselves to something and see what happens and see what it is that we're called to do. See what it is that how we need to respond to the world. Yeah. It doesn't matter that we haven't got the answers right now. Yeah. It's an attitude, it's a focus, it's a mindset, it's an aspiration that we need to have right now. A willingness to serve and to give ourselves to something. Yeah, so last night in the puja we had a reading from Sangha on the Bodhisattva idea, when he talked about the Bodhisattva vow and what it really means, and one sentence from it was, it's but what the Bodhisattva vow really means, it's the willingness when the time is right to go beyond your personal limitations. Yeah, that's what we've got to be willing to do. We don't know what that means yet. Well, I don't. Maybe, you know, maybe some of you are doing things in the world. You know your vocation, and you know that's fantastic. For me, I'm in that space where I don't know yet, and I've realised that's okay. It's all about now the aspiration and the intention and the responsiveness. Yeah. And yeah, the big urban retreat that we've just had, that's also given me a clue. It's given me part of the answer. So on the big urban retreat, we took as our inspiration this text from Shantideva called the Bodhicharyavatara, the guide to how to become a bodhisattva, the guide to how to be a being dedicated to awakening, dedicated to alleviating the suffering of the world, dedicated to going beyond personal limitation for the sake of others. Yeah. And I found it incredible coming into contact with this text. And it's very hard to put it into words. The text is 1,200 years old. It's still alive. When you touch that text, you actually get an electric shock. It's extraordinary. It's powerful. It's alive. It's hard to put it into words. Yeah, I could feel it activating something within me just from reading it and studying it together and reciting it in pujas. And through that process, you're taken up into its perspective. you start to sort of see and feel and understand from the perspective that Shantideva is putting forwards in the text, at least to some extent, of course imperfectly, but at least to some extent. Something starts to feel possible. Something starts to feel really possible that was only a sort of abstract ideal before. The text contains a power. Yeah, it's part of that stream of spiritual energy flowing through the world. It's there. It's not always comfortable. Sometimes it was quite salutary, quite almost shameful, studying the text and sort of seeing, my selfishness, my self-preoccupation, seeing how I'm being called to sort of go beyond that into something else. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was bracing. It was inspiring as well. Yeah, so I still don't feel up to it. I still don't feel I'm the right person. I'm a particular temperament. I've got a particular life experience and background. I feel my limitations. I take comfort actually in that Sangha often said he didn't feel qualified to start a new Buddhist movement. He once said, I lacked so many of the qualifications. Yeah. Actually, if you felt qualified, you'd just be exhibiting your delusion. Yeah. No one person is qualified. Yeah. And that's partly why we're a Sangha, because we work together and we can help each other and support each other and what's the word? We can compensate for each other's. Yeah, we can bring in different strengths to compensate for other people's not so strong bits and so on. Yeah. But also, I think we mustn't play how much our own conditioning limits our ability to communicate with others. It is a factor, but we mustn't overplay it. So here's a famous quote from Sangha, and this quote is from a talk he gave in India. So it's a Westerner, a highly educated Westerner, giving a Dharma talk to ex-untouchable, mostly uneducated, quite poor background Indians. Yeah. I believe that humanity is basically one. I believe that it is possible for any human being to communicate with any other human being, to feel for any other human being, to be friends with any other human being. This is what I truly and deeply believe. This belief is part of my own experience. It is part of my own life. It is part of me. I cannot give up this belief, and I'd rather die than give it up. So yeah, I think we have to sort of aim all this at the younger generations in Croydon. And yeah, I have to be aware that in a way, I don't know their world. It's not anything that I know from my own experience. But I do know the Dharma. And I do know that we're all human and that we can communicate and understand one another. And then I also want personally to remember that we often have more influence than we think, but not always in the way we think. Yeah. So it's interesting, people coming along to Croydon Buddhist Centre and sort of interesting what they're touched by, what they notice, what they're moved by. So last New Year, we had a New Year urban retreat and, it was teachings and meditations and at the end we had a checkout and one woman said, I came along to meditate, but what struck me most was the beauty. Yeah, it was interesting. It just wasn't what I was expecting. She picked up on something. Yeah. And that often happens, actually. People say, oh, what I picked up on was the way You two that were teaching communicated with each other.
Mm.
Yeah. They pick up on something. Yeah. But it might not be what you think. Yeah. So I'm going to read you another quote. This one is from Thomas Merton. He was a Trappist monk, wasn't he? American, became a monk and became quite well known as a sort of Christian writer. And in the Vietnam War, a young American, I think, anti-war activist wrote to him, I think out of doubt and despair. And Merton wrote him a very, very lovely long letter back, which was eventually published. And it's quite well known. It's a little excerpt from that letter. So this is what Thomas Merton said to the young activist. I think it has application to all of us. Do not depend on the hope of results. When you're doing the sort of work you've taken on, you may have to face the fact that your work will be apparently worthless and even achieve no results at all. As you get used to this, you start more and more to concentrate not on the results, but on the value, the rightness, the truth of the work itself. And there too, a great deal has to be gone through, as gradually you struggle less and less for an idea and more for specific people. The range tends to narrow down, but it gets much more real in the end. It's the reality of personal relationships that saves everything. So I want to finish by coming back to where I started and the Buddha, wandering around northern India with Ananda towards the end of his life. He's old, he's still spiritually vital, but physically weary. His generation are passing on. And it's a time of social upheaval, political change, warfare, corruption, and this is quite close and personal to him. And there's a little incident. One point on this tour, a minister is sent from the Magadan tribe to ask the Buddha's counsel. So this used to happen sometimes. People would come and ask, quite high-level people would come and ask the Buddha for advice or for counsel. And the minister explains that the Magadan tribe is thinking of going to war to basically invade the neighboring Vajragupta tribe. And the Buddha tries to dissuade them. He uses various arguments to explain why that wouldn't be a very good idea. Yeah. And the minister listens and then goes off, back to his tribe to sort of convey that message. And a bit later, the Buddha and Ananda are kind of wandering, and they're just looking at this sort of scene, this open landscape, and there's this new fortress being built. And the Buddha says to Ananda, that's the start of a new empire. Yeah, that's going to be the frontier of a new empire. And, whatever I say, the forces are in play that war isn't going to stop. The Buddha sees, he can't do anything. There are certain kind of worldly forces at work, and he sees that there's this big change about to come. He's done what he can. He's tried. But he sees, that the ways of the world, the ups and downs of samsara will sadly go on. Yeah. The Buddha didn't have an easy life. The peace of the Buddha wasn't the peace that comes from escape. or ease or not having to deal with difficulty. His peace was the more real, true, deep peace who's of someone who'd faced into the realities of the world. He was at peace in the world, with the world. He understands the nature of samsara. He knows how the world goes. But he's not passive. It's not a world-weary acceptance. He faces into it unflinchingly, clearly, calmly, kindly. No panic, no alarm. He goes on communicating the truth, the Dharma, to anyone who will listen, conversation by conversation. Person by person, he goes on drawing together his community. And he doesn't know, but actually, he started a major world religion. He doesn't know that millions and millions of people are going to be uplifted by his teaching and by his vision of awakening. He doesn't know that that vision is going to inspire, at least for a time, flourishing, vibrant spiritual cultures in India, in Tibet, in China, in Japan, and South Asia. He doesn't know that 2,500 years later, his teaching will travel the whole world to places he never even knew existed, in times so vastly different to his. He doesn't know that even on Croydon High Street, people will meet to share and practice his teaching. Of course, he couldn't have known. He was just thoroughly immersed in the truth and the Dharma as he walked around India, really meeting, really engaging with whoever he met. So let us completely immerse ourselves in that teaching, in that living stream of spiritual energy, so that it can transform us, and so that we can then be a vessel or a channel for others. Let us collectively be the terton, discovering new ways for the Dharma to speak to new times and for the coming generations. Let's offer the vision of awakening, a gift of hope and meaning. Let's be bold, courageous, creative. Let's never give in to the doom stories, closing the door of fatalism. Let's keep the door open. Thank you.